All right, we are back with live coverage here at Microsoft Ignite 2017. I hope you've had as much fun as I've had. There's been a ton of good content. Anything that stands out to you? By the way, I'm here with Darrell as a service.
Thank you. Yeah, look, what's really stood out to me as a trend across all the sessions I've been to is that Microsoft is really listening to their customers. Mm-hmm. They've got various different ways of listening, user voice, feedback, there's surveys and the like, but we're really seeing evidence that the features that they're coming out with, the new content, is all around what we've been asking for.
Fantastic. And how does that feel?
Oh, it feels awesome. It's really good to see that we are part of the process now.
Fantastic. All right, we have Alistair in the West Hall. How you doing, my friend?
It's all good this side. It's my last segment of the day. And we've got the People's CIO. I think that's what I called you earlier on, eh? Yeah. Well, welcome back. What are we talking about today?
Talking about security now in this segment.
Okay, so your take on security. We've heard a few announcements today. A lot of talk about GDPR or the GDPR. We've talked about it earlier. What is your take on where Microsoft is going with security and protection, especially since it's wrapped up now into Microsoft 365?
Yeah, this kind of ties back to our earlier discussion around artificial intelligence a bit, which is Microsoft is starting to lower the hurdle and make security more approachable for companies. So it's easier to integrate that in with the solutions that you're building from a customer perspective, but then it's also just there from the usability applications too. So when you look at 365, when you look at Azure, it's just a plug-in piece that you can now take advantage of in a much more meaningful way.
So there's a lot of talk about shadow IT, and we spoke about it a little bit earlier. And shadow IT is big. We know that Microsoft's got no less than 57 compliance certifications that it's adhering to. Your take on shadow IT, where is it going? What are people not doing, or what are people doing to manage and mitigate that risk?
Yeah, so compliance and regulatory is one thing. Shadow IT is something a little different. So I believe there are two reasons why you end up with shadow IT in an organization. One is because your IT organization may not be working as efficiently as it can, and so then you end up with organizations outside of IT that are building up their own IT shop, either to be more responsive, so it might come from a speed perspective, might come from just a knowledge perspective. And then the second reason why is when you have an overt reason why you want to build innovation into an organization. You want to take it outside of IT and seek out those folks that really understand that line of business. So there are two ways that shadow IT typically enters into an organization. I think the first example, where it kind of shows up on its own, that's usually an indicator that you have to rethink your IT organization and what you're doing in terms of providing value. The second is something you should absolutely embrace. I'm a big believer in shadow IT when used appropriately.
So coming back to what you were saying earlier on around bringing your own device, also companies are still issuing devices to employees. What's your take on how to move that around where bringing your own devices actually fuses with you running around with one device instead of two?
Yeah, I think it depends on the particular need. So in some cases, you might have a specific need, maybe going back to a regulatory or compliance requirement, or having separate devices, having a very locked down device that someone can't use for personal use. Might make sense to have a company issued device. But again, you're also thinking about people that are very knowledgeable with these devices. They're very comfortable with them. They might even have better technology in their pocket, their personal device, than what you're able to issue them from a company perspective.
All right, great. Well, thanks for your time, and we're crossing back for the last time. See you sometime over the week. Goodbye.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Alistair. That dude dresses really cool.
Yeah,
I'm just saying. I mean, I feel like a schleb here, not dressed appropriately. So you mentioned that the thing you like the most about what you were seeing is that Microsoft is listening. Do you have an example of something like that?
Yeah, one example we have heard is that there have been about 54 different items in user voice for OneDrive for Business that they've taken action on. And so we've heard a little about what's coming, and I really encourage people to attend these sessions during the week because you'll see those 54 fulfilled.
I see. Is there anything else that you want to talk about when it comes to the stuff that you're seeing here?
Yeah, what I'm seeing is a better use of collaboration tools.
I see.
Far easier to work from, to transition between. I'm a big fan of Microsoft Teams and that you can just work out of one space. So that's one of the trends I'm seeing.
As you're thinking about Teams, Tell me a feature in Teams that maybe people are not using enough that you think they should be.
They should be using chat while they're in meetings because all those notes stay there. They're persistent.
I see. So when I'm in a meeting, you're telling me to write stuff down in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
Or in, like, because I noticed that there was other features in there. There's like wiki and there's files.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like there's a lot in there that I'm not using, and I'm hoping maybe someone can help me understand.
Yep.
So what do you think is like a really, really, really good use? Like, here, help me out. How would someone use Teams in an organization?
They would start off by identifying how people want to communicate. So is Teams the right choice? They would create perhaps a team for their department.
Okay.
And then they would use channels for different discussion points, projects, and the like. Always using files, always use OneNote. Got to put a plug in there because I'm a OneNote Avenger. And I would make use of those meeting capabilities to have stand-up meetings just right there in the channel.
So for remote workers, I feel like this is probably one of the best tools ever. Are you a remote worker? Do you know
I'm very
anybody?
much a remote worker.
Do you use Teams as a remote worker?
I use Teams all the time. We have a little segment we always do twice a week, and it is used. Basically, we just turn it on and we carry on working.
That's awesome.
Virtual office.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Darrell. Looks like we're ready for Sue, who's in the West building. How are you doing, Sue?
Hey, cool. I'm here in the West building with Pat Moorhead, and we just came from a session with Jeff Tieper and Ron, and we learned a little bit about creativity, productivity. So tell me a little bit about what you do and what you thought was the most interesting thing about what we heard.
Sure. My name is Pat Moorhead. I'm an industry analyst at More Insights and Strategy. So, it's funny, sometimes us analysts have to hear something 2 or 3 times before we get it. And I think the biggest thing that struck me this time was that Microsoft can hit you at many points. If you want to use SharePoint sites or you want to use Teams, if you have different ways your team wants to work, you can choose that.
Right, so I think it's actually kind of interesting that every team kind of has their own way of working. And I think what we learned is that teams can make some choices about the way that they work. So did you take a look at you looked at the Files on Demand kind of demo that we saw in the beginning? What did you think about that?
So Files on Demand is what everybody has wanted forever. And I have to say, I liked it when it was in Windows 8, and I like it now that it's back in Windows 10, because you don't have to have a massive hard drive for all your files, but you know that something is there if you want it and you're connected.
Yep, I think that's really pretty cool. So anything else that struck you about what we learned?
Yeah, so it's funny, I had heard that Skype was going to be brought into Teams, and I was thinking, gosh, how is this going to work? And it was underwhelming, but great in that it did just what I had expected to do, which was very simple, and it's had the behavior that I expected.
Yeah, I think it's really powered by Skype for Business. So this is the familiar calling experience that you love, but brought to you where you're working.
That's exactly right. I do like the fact that Microsoft is really, really giving enterprises a long time with Skype for Business with updates, so they're not, pulling the rug out from under anybody.
Great. Well, thanks so much for talking to us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you. Great talking with you.
Thanks. Back to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sue. That was impressive. I love the whole idea of Skype inside of Teams. Now, we talked about Teams with you a little bit. You talked about being a remote worker. Why don't you talk about being at a conference? What is that like? What are some tips that you have for those maybe that are watching at home and that are going to come to this next year or that are here now?
Yeah, I would say treat it like a massive live community. So rather than just attending sessions and writing down stuff, make sure you turn to the person next to you and have a discussion about what you just heard.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because, it's really around the stories, the ideas, the reflections of how we're going to be using these features. That's where you get that inspiration.
Absolutely. So what was the first conference you went to, and how did it change the way you saw community?
Let's say it was Microsoft Ignite in Chicago. I saw the size of the community there.
That was the first Ignite, and it was amazingly large.
It was, yeah. And so this feeling that I work with these peers, it was amazing.
Awesome. Okay, looks like we're ready for Laura, who's in the West Hall. Laura, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, great. How are you? I'm doing good. I'm here with Alan again.
Hey, Laura. We're back.
So, Alan, this conversation is going to be about Microsoft Teams, but there's a little bit of a backstory. Just briefly, it used to be Link. There was this thing called Link. That was an instant messaging client. And then it became Skype for Business. after Microsoft bought Skype, and now it's becoming.
They have to do some branding for that $1 billion.
It's morphing into something else. So what is this whole Skype for Business to Teams thing?
So a big announcement they made this week was taking the client side of Skype for Business and moving. It's going to eventually over time be merged into the Microsoft Teams client. The Skype for Business on-premises server is not going away anywhere, but new functionality will be coming in the cloud. But by unifying to a single client for that group messaging, chat, file sharing sort of experience, it should bring more of an integrated and seamless experience to the users of Office 365. They're going to get a lot more tools and functionality and partner integration than what they currently have with the Skype for Business client.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the concept of unified messaging now that with all these new announcements?
Sure. So, unified messaging used to be sort of just about voice and video. And it's interesting now it's really expanded out to all sorts of things like chat bots and integrations with other tools. And the idea is that if you're in Microsoft Teams, you can switch context from what you're doing. You can be having a text-based chat and say, okay, now we need to move to video. Start moving to video just with the click of a button, schedule a meeting, ad hoc meeting, whichever way you want it. But then at the end of that, all of that content is in that shared channel. You don't have to go back to another tool. You don't have to upload it to something. In a future time, you can just go back and the entire recording of that conversation, including using Microsoft's AI capabilities, the transcript of that meeting, which is pretty cool, is all there in the Microsoft Teams channel waiting for you.
That's huge. Before a couple of weeks ago, it was a little frustrating because anything that my team and I needed to be able to start using Teams and start collaborating on projects, it was really just only going to be internal. So it was pretty limiting because sometimes you want to have your customers be part of the conversation and be able to keep the conversation all in one place. So what did they say about the whole concept of external users and partners?
Okay, so in the Microsoft environment, what they've done is they've introduced something called external access. And that external access is allowing people that are not in your Microsoft Active Directory, but are in a alternative Microsoft Active Directory, they have to have that ID to have access to your internal tools. So you can invite in customers, you can invite in partners, you can invite in competitors if you wanted, I guess, but then they would only have secure access to the channels and the information that you wanted them to have access to.
This is huge. So I can see a good use for this, at least would be projects that we deal with customers. And so in your just daily life, what kind of things just off the top of your head are you actually going to be using Teams for?
Well, you and I are going to communicate with it via Teams afterwards on this. No, but sales teams working on pipeline generation, marketing teams working on campaigns.
Thanks. We've got to wrap it up. Sorry. Okay. All right. Back to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Laura. By the way, this show would not have been possible with the awesome MVPs that are actually on stage with me right now. Let's take a look at Magnus and the hair. Notice that they swapped hairs on us.
I know, right? That was cool.
Any last thoughts before we sign off?
You know what? We've been bathing in this awesome feeling, this atmosphere that this conference has all day. It's been a true privilege. I've had so much fun, and I'm just going to keep enjoying the rest of the week.
And it's crazy that we still have 4 more days, right?
I know. How we're going to even last.
I know. Awesome. All right, what about you, my friend?
Well, just I do want to point people towards the Collab Talk tweet jams that are happening every day at 12:30. If you're here and you want to participate locally, we're over in the West Hall from 12:30 to 1:30. But otherwise, online, it's the hashtag Collab Talk. Tomorrow, we're talking cybersecurity and the Microsoft Cloud. But we're every day this week.
Awesome. What have you liked the best so far today?
Today? Well, I really enjoyed walking around just talking to people and recording different videos, but getting different perspectives, what people are excited to see, because, I have the things that I'm interested in seeing at this event, and so to really kind of do a deep dive into what individuals want, and it's kind of opened up different perspectives of what's interesting other people.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mr. Bouclé. We have the rest of the MVPs standing by in the West Hall. How are you, my friends?
All right. Thanks so much. It's been an awesome day, and we're doing great. We're wrapping the day up.
Awesome. It's been great having you all. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you, my friends. This concludes our Ignite Live coverage here on day one. It's been an awesome day, and we're only starting the week. It's crazy. There are over 700 sessions happening, which you can check out on My Ignite. Decide on your learning path, bookmark the sessions, and take full advantage of all of this great content. Starting tomorrow, check back here on this site. We'll feature the top breakout sessions from the day before, an easy way for you to catch up on the most popular breakout sessions. That's right, come back tomorrow and every day this week to Microsoft.com/ignite. On behalf of Microsoft and our team of MVP community reporters, thank you for watching. See you next time.